Welcome back to the show. When you talk about healthy eating, we usually think about eating our fruits and veggies, right? But a new book called What Your Food Ate is talking about how to heal our land and reclaim our health. Authors Biklé and David Montgomery join me now. Thank you so much for writing this book and being here with us, because this is such an important issue that I feel like more and more people are starting to think about, but we really need to attack this subject. So first of all, what is the title of the book trying to convey?
Yeah, well, I think what we're getting at, we've all heard about how you are what you eat, but we're peeling that proverbial onion down quite a few more layers to talk about what is it that your food ate and how does that affect our health? Like, what are the actual connections by which what our food ate ripples up out of the soil and out of the animals that are in the human diet into our own bodies.
And people are familiar with this idea, right? Because we've now understood that animals that are fed hormones are no good for our children. We understand this, but it goes much deeper than that, talking about the soil being healthy, right? Let's talk about that.
Yeah, the way the connection works is that the health of the soil is greatly dependent on the life in the soil. And one of the things we've learned a lot about in the last 80 years is how soil life facilitates getting things like mineral elements, mineral micronutrients that our bodies need to maintain health. How plants make compounds that work as antioxidants and anti-inflammatories when they get into our bodies. And it turns out that when we farm in ways that affects the life in the soil, it affects what gets into our food in ways that ultimately matter to our health.
I just spoke with someone who kind of taught me the fact that when you buy from a farmer's market, there's more vitamins in that food because of the soil, because we're over farming, right? We're using chemicals and things, and it's really killing the soil, right?
Yeah, we're disturbing the communities of life in the soil. When we plow and when we use too many chemicals, when we disturb it too much, either physically or chemically, it alters the communities of life that those plants and crops have evolved with and that we evolved eating. And so it changes what we're ending up getting in our food in ways that we didn't used to appreciate.
Yeah. Okay, so what kind of research did you two do for this book?
Quite a bit of research. Actually, the book would have been a little thicker had we included the 1,000 references
Oh my goodness.
in the print version. It's available electronically, and we encourage people to dig into that. So it was mostly digging down into what's called the peer-reviewed literature in fields from agronomy, which is basically the study of crops, all the way into immunology, a lot of research into animal science. Yeah, because, for example, just, one connection about, and we're all interested in our immune systems today and in inflammation because
of COVID. We've learned a lot about it.
We have, and what's really interesting is that fats that we often think about, oh, I want to really kind of back off on the fats and not eat quite as many of those. As it turns out, fats play a really profound role, in starting up our immune systems in terms of inflammation, but also, if there were a dial on there, fats are really important to dial inflammation back down.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and so that's why the balance of fats, in particular omega-6 fats that we've all heard about, which are basically found in seed oils, and omega-3 fats, which are found in grass-fed animal products, so dairy and meat.
I was thinking a lot about this issue about how people who are farming themselves, going to these farmers markets, it's a really, you got to be dedicated to that life. What are some of the issues that people who work in agriculture are facing these days, both the local farmer all the way up to, the big time industrial farmers?
One of the really big issues today, of course, is the rising price of nitrogen fertilizer. One of the things we've come to depend on for sort of modern conventional agriculture, with the war in Ukraine really affecting that market. One of the things we found in doing the research for this book is that different ways of farming that involve no-till farming, minimal disturbance of the soil, growing cover crops, diversifying the crops that we grow, can actually greatly reduce the need for nitrogen fertilizer, which can help reduce the cost for farmers. Because one of the big problems farmers face just across the board in the Western world is just basic economics. They're not getting as much for what they harvest, and it costs them more to grow it, and they're getting squeezed in the middle.
Yeah.
So one of the things that we're pretty optimistic about is that these new regenerative farming techniques can actually help reduce the costs for farmers and help make them more economically profitable.
So I'm sure when someone reads this book, they will know the answers to this, so we won't get too deep into it. But what should we be looking for when shopping for our foods, and how can we help support agriculture that is conscious and that is helping to prepare the soil?
Go ahead.
Well, the first one is recognizing that what your food ate actually matters to what you're eating. And so supporting farmers who adopt practices that are soil friendly it is really beneficial. A great way to figure that out is at the farmers market, ask people what they do. You know, look into what it is were the practices that grew your food, and also advocating for change to promote regenerative agriculture.
Okay.
Yeah, and you know, in the grocery store, because not everybody can go to a farmer's market, if there's information on you know, a fruit or a vegetable or a package of some sort, look and see what is that label talking about. I mean, everyone these days is familiar with the green and white organic label.
Yeah.
And most of the time, our very best organic farmers are doing good practices for soil and soil health, but that's not you know, uniform across the board. So to the extent that someone could even start talking with, say, the produce manager of the grocery store and say, hey, I've heard about this thing, soil health and regenerative agriculture. What do you know about that? Would any of the produce here be grown, you know, in that manner?
Yeah. What would you say, I know this is a big, broad question, but what would you say overall to society? I mean, not everyone can afford organic. Not everyone can go and buy the best of the best right there. So what do we do as a society to try to start to change these practices?
Yeah.
You know, we can rethink our agricultural subsidies and our policies to actually reward farmers who adopt soil-friendly, soil-building practices, because the actual costs of growing healthy food is not that high. We've come to depend on methods that actually degrade the land as the basis for our food system, and we need to rethink that and reframe it so that we actually reward farmers. They need to be able to stay in business, but we all need to be able to afford to eat as well. And so there's lots of policies. So there's room for both bottom-up consumer demand to help shift the change to more regenerative farming, but there's also a lot of room for top-down policies.
Absolutely, and they're important. What are we, just a few meals away from anarchy? Is that what they say?
Indeed.
Seriously, we need to think about this. Thank you all so much for joining us. This has been wonderful. The book is What Your Food Ate. I hope you all go and read it.